Everybody, Chris and Lumen here. Been pretty busy here lately, filling orders, dealing with clients, watching weird stuff go on, trying to get a sense of what's going on in the world, what we're supposed to do, figuring out the clues that she's leaving through the synchronicities, which last night was a pretty big one. If you happen, I don't know how much the community posts make it into the feed. I'm assuming they do because, like, I know Kenneth does that a lot, and I always see them. But the one that we put up last night with like the little message from Sophia and then the link to the free movie, at least if you're in the U.S. I watched that movie last night. It's called The Nines. It's got a younger Ryan Reynolds in it, and it was interesting. I wasn't that into it at first. It's one of those, like, you're sitting through a bunch of stuff, like not really knowing what's going on, but then it all kind of starts coming together, by the third act, and then you understand. And what was interesting about that movie, what it was showing at the end, is like it is very close to like what she's been trying to explain to me. And there were just little different things that showed up in it. I was like, huh, that is awfully on the nose. It came to me through another person that's very tuned in that mentioned it. That's what she does a lot. She passes notes through different people. And I'd never, ever heard of this freaking movie. Never seen a trailer for it. Nothing. Never. Kind of surprised me. But yet, the ending of it was like, huh, that is strange. But also, there's been a lot of stuff going on, like in the story of the world, which I'm not trying to pay too much close attention to. I mean, I'm watching it without getting sucked into it. Because there is one thing that is always going to be part of the story of the world, and that is fear. And fear is the exact polar opposite energy that you want to be into if you want to be connected to the light, to source, to have a clear channel. But definitely some things stepping up in that regard. So you can kind of see where the story's going. Then I had some stuff to deal with someone that and I have to be careful. I can't say too much about this. And I know that kind of takes some of the oomph out of the story. But, part of what we do is we help people that are dealing with spiritual attacks and things like that. And that can come in a lot of shapes and forms. It's not always going to be something over the top like you see in Hollywood. But if you're having like bad dreams at night that you can feel when you wake up because you're getting attacked by things and stuff like that, and other weird stuff's going on, like, yeah, that's probably an issue. So this was somebody that I knew, and I don't even know if I should even bother if I can't, explain the whole thing openly, because some people monitor my channel. But the stuff that was causing problems like made itself known to me and kind of like thumbed its nose at me. I'm like, are you for real right now? Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? Like, no. But the other interesting thing about that, as I was helping somebody with that, is she was kind of showing me things that I've been putting together, but sometimes you got to have the situation in front of you to help you put it together. Figuring out how to work within the rules of the game. And we got an interesting set of thoughts on that. Like, this is a way to like protect yourself without actually taking the rules of fate, which we're usually the ones that are tripping over those and causing more problems for us in the future, flipping that around on the bad guys, setting things up in such a certain way that it turns into this, FAFO situation. It's like all this stuff is going to happen. It's part of the defense system. It's part of the pendants or whatever we do. Like, all this stuff is going to happen if you cross my border. Like, I'm just trying to live in peace. But if you're going to come at me, You're going to try something dumb, which is, that makes me think that these things only exist to test you, to teach you or whatever, because you got to be like a freaking idiot to be some kind of negative spirit and want to go up against her. Like, she's going to clean your clock. But if you deal with it the wrong way, you kind of set yourself up for more stuff. But yeah, we got it really dialed in, and it also connects to the stuff that we learned from the movie, the new bracelets and what they mean, where the previous bracelets we were giving out, not the Benedict bracelets, but the silicone bracelets. That was just kind of like a fun thing that I did, trying it out. But we got a second set in that actually means something, actually has a purpose. So that would be, these ones that got, I'll explain what this is all about. Instead of printed, they're golden, they're embossed. Probably can't read it. It says, "I am the light" on it. So these actually mean something. These actually serve a purpose for you mentally, and especially as a reminder. And we're going to get into what that stuff means. But yeah, where do you want to start? Start with some good stuff, start with the dumb stuff, and then move on with it. Because yeah, I was kind of on a little bit of a war footing most of the day today, because I was just like, no, you didn't. Stop messing with people that I'm close to, and then thumbing your nose, because I'm not going to fall for any of these stupid tricks. And you're actually helping me come up with better ways. So, all right, you want to screw around, find out? We can do that. Okay, so if you want to know more, then don't go away.
I am the fire, I am burning brighter, roaring like a storm, and I am the one I've been waiting for, screaming like a siren, and I've been burning brighter. I am the fire.
All right, let's start with the stuff I was dealing with today, the defensive stuff. I try not to focus too much on this because, you got to be careful on where you place your attention. That being said, being a complete ostrich doesn't help much either. Now, you can pull off the ostrich routine if you completely hermitize yourself like I am, although I have to help people, so I can't really do that. But the more people there are in your network, in your life matrix, whatever, the more people you're around, like the more chances of this stuff happening. So I don't think I'm shocking anybody like, oh my God, I didn't know that. If I say like there's evil in the world, right? Like that's kind of like a given. It's a given. But people in general like do their best to ignore it. And their ego mind kind of helps that along. But there are different types of people in the world. There's the light people, like us, most of us. And then you've got the darker ones, which they're usually in positions of power. And then you've got like the largest group, which are kind of like, they talk about three types. We've done videos about three types of people. But the largest group are just like players in the game, or not players in the game, but characters in the game that we have our experiences with. We plug into one way or the other. They're like the mirror people. You need to have a bad guy to play out some life experience. It's going to be a mirror person. You'll be reflecting your shadow, your adversary off of them. You want to fall in love? It's going to be a mirror person. It's going to reflect your lumen off of them. And a lot of them can be benign most of the time, but as Morpheus so eloquently described in The Matrix,
it's another training program designed to teach you one thing. If you are not one of us, you are one of them.
What are they?
Sentient programs. They can move in and out of any software still hardwired to their system. That means that anyone we haven't unplugged is potentially an agent. Inside the Matrix, they are everyone, and they are no one.
If you're not one of us, you're one of them. Open doorways, open mirrors. And they could, there's a lot of the stuff that we call evil bad. It's effective because it doesn't show itself. Okay, sometimes you gotta, Hollywood can be very beneficial for learning in codex situations, but at the same time, it can be harmful in that it's showing you false paradigms. It's showing you things that don't look the way that they actually look. It can be a little bit confusing because I think most people expect these kind of situations to look like some, Blumhouse freaking horror movie, which it usually doesn't. It usually doesn't. It's only after you've gotten a lot of veils taken off, you've got a high degree of spiritual discernment through Sophia and things that you start to actually see it. But people can have issues, and it's going to be people, but before you get too like weirded out, it's not going to be so much you. It's going to be like people around you. Like they could have things attached to them, or they could be open doorways or something like that. But they're the ones that just antagonize situations. They might have something driving them, but you don't notice it, or they don't notice it. But at certain times, if you do something, like they become active and something uses them to monkey with you, you will start to notice this at sometimes using our stuff. The more people you're around, the higher chance, there's going to be some of these people mixed in there. Because as we keep amping up the power levels, as her power keeps growing and growing and growing, and we keep amping up the power of the pendants, the Benedict stuff and all that, it has a bigger energy field, a bigger reach, and can trigger a lot more things. So in this case, I had made a super Aegis for somebody, because I'm starting to make the Aegises more with liquid chrism cores, like the other ones. And in some cases, they're like double layered. Like I'll cast one pendant, wrap it, and then cast it in the larger pendant, so that you don't have to worry about like the wraps. But then after that one's in there, I've got all this extra space to stuff it with other stones. But anyway, I gifted somebody this in my family, one of these super Aegises, and it was pretty freaking powerful, pretty potent, more potent than any of the ones that they'd had before. So imagine if somebody has something, say you got like 6 people living in a house, and 1 or 2 of them has stuff in them that's darker, that's kind of hiding most of the time. And then another person in the house has like this giant Sophia powered, demon slayer freaking pendant that's just putting out this disruption field. It's going to agitate them, and they might act up. And it seems like it's always kind of like directed at a higher level, so you can learn from it. But it's like they'll give themselves away in the craziest ways. Like you'll see it. I'm like, seriously, did you just like do that right in front of me? And then people start having problems. That's one of the best things about like the Aegises, and in some cases, just any of the pendants. I've had this happen with people that had very basic, spiritual energy pendants, but it's divine energy. It's her. So she, it's the light. It's literally like, you got vampires and sunlight. Like it's gonna freaking stir things up. But once they kind of reveal themselves, then you're like, oh, okay, that's what's going on here. And you might start to notice patterns and whatnot. So that's what's nice about them is they can, one of the big things they'll do first is they'll smoke things out of hiding. Because you can't fix something if you don't know what's broke. So because these things are getting so much better at it, I actually put this whenever you get, the pendants and things like that, we give you some of the most powerful stuff for free just because she wants people to have it. So like in this case, this is one of the Benedict bracelets that we put our special sauce on and charge it. I actually made these little warning stickers on them. So like, here's what they say. It says, warning, the contents of this bag are extremely powerful against negative energy and entities. It shields, repels, and purges such energy backed by divine power. This means that it may reveal things you didn't know was there. Or you may just feel calmer and safer. If you have any issues, contact us immediately. Like whatever your ego mind tries to tell you. Like if you need help with stuff and you're already working with us, like you are allowed to contact us. Like I'll stop what I'm doing and show guide, what you need to know, what maybe help you out or something, whatnot. But everyone is in a different situation. Everybody's got different dynamics going on, and I can't possibly know what that is. You might be nice and clear. You might be really tuned to the divine light, divine love. You don't have any drama around you or whatnot, in which case people generally report that, they get warm, safe feelings from it. If you yourself have some deeply buried negative stuff and you didn't realize that it's there, it might start pulling it out. Because, there's a lot that went in. It is not just a freaking Benedict. It is like multi-layered, multi-stacked. It's meant to just kind of like hit whatever needs to be hit. Yeah. We detailed some of that stuff in recent videos. And it's not a bad thing. It might seem like it at first, like, oh my God, stuff's going on. It's like, good. Like understand that that's always been there, but you didn't know it. But it's monkeying with your life and your mind and your body and other people, the whole time, and you didn't realize that it was there. So if we clear it, that's going to clear a lot of stuff out of your life. Excuse me. So yeah, we've had a lot of that lately, and then once things get smoked out, then usually if we do some sort of session or whatnot with Sophia, we can just knock it out of the park and be done with it. Well, first things first, using an example from like pest control, which I did for like a year. It was like the last job that I ever had where I worked for the man. Or if you've ever had the pest control guys at your house, or you work in a restaurant and you've seen the pest control guys, like say for instance, you got roaches in the kitchen. First thing that they're going to do is inspect. They're probably going to point out that you need to clean your mess up. But it's like, okay, where are they nesting at? Where are they hiding? What's their harborage? So what we'd do is they would use it's called a flushing agent. It's basically like tear gas for bugs. It's got a straw, put it in the cracks and stuff, and just like, and if they're hiding in there, they're going to scatter. Okay. This stuff can have that kind of effect. If you got negative crap in your house, you got negative crap attached to you, you got negative crap in your roommate, and you didn't realize it was there, yeah, it can trigger that stuff. And to me, that's not a bad thing. And here's why. It is just part of life. It's part of this place. And if you want to beat it, if you want to finish it, you can't ignore it. That doesn't mean become paranoid of it or, look for it all over the place, because you can go too far with that. But just know that it exists. It's not something new. Polarity, light, dark, good, evil, like this whole place runs on that. It also runs on illusion and manipulation, and keeping you in a constant state of worry, constant state of fear. So there's always stuff, and sometimes we can make things that will smoke them out, smoke them out. And like in the case I was dealing with, sometimes it can be smoke them out enough that, you know, they'll be like super aggressive. And the person they were aggressive with, it was mainly a dream, but there was a lot of things before and after in the physical world that kind of like indicated like, oh, there's no way that this is, you know, a coincidence. And the person's like, yeah, I didn't have my Benedict bracelet on or anything like that. And I'm like, yeah. So this is just part of the spiritual journey. As your light grows, like there's this whole like middle section of the spiritual journey in which your light is getting brighter, but you haven't mastered it yet. You haven't unlocked enough stuff to know how to do things yet. That's when you're at most risk for shenanigans. You're like the porch light at nighttime in the Louisiana swamp. Like, what does light do? It draws bugs. Until you get to the point of being able to control the light, and then you can make the light so bright that it's just going to repel, if not just incinerate, which we're perfectly capable of that too.
You obviously do not know who you are fucking with!
I like that example because I feel like it's one of the biggest in your face clues about the game, about the place that we live in. That's why vampire stories never get old, and why the movies and the legends and stuff can vary on like what kills them, what doesn't. The one thing that almost always does is sunlight. And as they've shown in many other shows, just to be sure like that you understand, it's the UV in the sunlight. And the UV light is connected to Sophia. That's like the dark light. That's why she's got the, not only is it why we've got the light bars, but it's also why we switched resins. Like I used to get the 2-part resin. It was a lot messier. And like if you screwed it up, like it was just screwed up, where now I can fix things better. Now we use the UV resin. And then by setting that intention, that's part of the charging, is that UV light, because that's her light. And UV kills bacteria, you know, parasites, vampires, all sorts of stuff. That's, you know, when the world is telling you UV's bad, oh my God, UV's so awful. Not to me, it ain't. It is to bad things, though. Maybe that's the real reason why all the cars have UV filter, you know, treatment on the windshields and UV on the sunglasses. It's because for all the freaking parasitic stuff running around here, they don't like that UV light. That's Sophia light, whatever. But either which way, yeah, the power of these things is going up. It's obviously needed because it was all her idea. Like, this is like, it's the stuff that we give you for free is more powerful than anything you're going to find out there anywhere. Like, if there's something more powerful than what we make that works against negative energy and entities, show me. I'm serious. Show me. I want to see what it is. Because our Benedict metals are about 100 times more powerful than if you go get them blessed by the Catholic priest at church. They work, but we want that. We have to shed off all this negative vibrational stuff, all this negative energy, negative entities, parasitic attachments, negative quantum entanglements. We need as much power as we can because we want to pull that crap off of us. Detach from the world. Like, it is always trying to bring you down. So it's very, very important. Yeah, I wish I could tell you more about what happened because it was so nuts. But yeah, we were definitely like, nope, nope, nope. I'm like, I think that they just thumbed their nose at us, Thoman. And like, when that stuff goes on, she goes away from, cute little pretty princess to this.
Let me tell you something. Me and you, one-on-one, no one else around. I will beat your ass like a Cherokee drum.
You gotta realize, everything that we've been through, not just the 20 plus years of doing the work, but more importantly, the 7 years of the hero's journey. Like, you could watch all these ghost hunting shows and stuff like that and watch them like build the story up between them and the clients, and like, oh, demon, let's be all scared of it. Ooh, oh, these things are bad. These things will get you. You're not standing in your light yet, because it's not us that should be afraid of them. They should be afraid of us. We are the light. But if you don't conquer your fear and your beliefs and your expectations and the ego mind trying to use your imagination to imagine bad things happening to you, no, when you're standing in your power and you have divine authority, they're afraid of you. Plain and simple. So I don't sweat any of that stuff. It just annoys me. It annoys me because it's like, I can't wait to get out of this world. I don't like it. It's dirty. It's nasty. Once the thing happens where the light people are removed, call it the rapture or whatever, but once we're pulled out of this world, that's why it goes horribly bad and collapses in on itself, because the light, everything good, everything that is life in souls, we're the ones that are putting the light in here. We're the ones that's putting the good in here. So you got to learn to turn your light up and quit fearing the dark. There's all sorts of stuff that can be done. We know how to do it. You just got to talk to us. I'm trying to get her to come up with some thing, like I can do a video or something like that to negate some of the programming that everyone has. Because it only happens, I've seen it with other people too, mostly me, but other people, like if they're actually putting out information from the light, there's less interaction, because it's the stuff, it's the programming and everything is designed to keep you away from the freaking light. Makes you procrastinate, makes you not ask questions. I see lots of comments, if there's not really like a question in there, you pretty much get like a heart, that I read your comment or whatnot. But, people actually ask questions directly to us, we're going to answer them. We want people to be as free from this stuff as possible, because that is going to free you up to put more of your attention and energy on the light. And that's what you actually want and need. So let's go ahead and switch to talking about the light. All right, let's talk about the light stuff. I don't want to spoil anything if you still plan on watching that movie. Like I said, most of it I was kind of like, okay, where's this going? But then it finally gets to the point. And then once it gets to the point, then everything else before it becomes more relevant. And it's like, oh, okay, so I might have to watch it twice again. But this is what was interesting about it, was how similarly it covered topics that Sophia was just talking about. And then the fact that she prodded somebody to tell me about the movie. But spoiler alert, it I won't spoil everything because it's, you know, you got to figure out how it works or whatnot. But it's basically Ryan Reynolds doing like this 3-tiered life, hard to explain. But at the end, you know, these people come to get him, and they're trying to remind him. And this theme this exact same theme has shown up in other movies and shows before too. And it's kind of like, oh hey, like, you're not God, you're like a step down from God. Like it's called the nines because nines are like humans are 7 and nines are like the creators. And like he created the world, and he was just so addicted to it. That's why he was like addicted to crack. And one of the things, like, the world was his crack. Like he couldn't let it go, and he was living the life of his avatar, just totally immersed in it, just forgot, or like you've been gone for 4,000 years. And at the end, he kind of wakes up to who he is, and he has to let go. But he does fix everything before he leaves. He doesn't let anything get destroyed. And he's wearing this bracelet where he kind of like pulls off the bracelet and goes back to being like this diamond crystal being or something, going back into the light. But that is kind of the whole theme there is very similar to what she has been teaching me, and I haven't quite got it nailed down. Like I feel like there's a button push here somewhere. Like I'm really close to it. But here's why she went with this one. So this is another one of the things that come in the packages with the pendants. So like I said, it says I am the light on it. And we went with this like golden yellow color. So let's break that down as far as like if we're talking. So that's obviously the English thing, and that's the thing to remember. It's like the band that it's there to remind you like what you actually are. It's what you're trying to get to. It's like, I'm not my name, I'm not my body, I'm not my identity, I am what is behind it. I am what is behind it. But in Latin it is ego sum lumen. Ego sum lumen. So ego in Latin is basically I, singular, personal. And sum is I am. So it could technically be just sum lumen, but the ego is important for other reasons, which is just ego sum lumen. I am the light. So I could turn this around in a different way, like for me personally, and be like, start getting my mind that way, being like I'm forgetting the word, but now I've got the divine masculine, divine feminine put back together, and Chris is the ego, the identity. It's like I am, the light means lumen, so I am lumen. So it's like I am, this identity that I'm playing here is basically the masculine face of the true self, which you could say is lumen. That's one way of looking at it. But you are still part of the bigger thing. You are part of the light. So ego sum lumen is a statement of essentially surrendering your primary ego identity to the light, which is what you actually are, and thus accessing more power by sacrificing the identity of self. And I think that's what all these stories and metaphors are talking about. The sacrifice. They sacrificed themselves. Christ sacrificed himself, and all that stuff. It's like, yeah. And the other thing is ego mind. Like this goes to like what we're trying to figure out. Like we see it mechanically, but I'm trying to figure out how to switch this, like do something that makes it stick in a bigger way. So you know how we always talk about the ego mind? Well, what she's showing me is like that's kind of like a mistaken label that's kind of screwing us by calling it that. We say, oh, the ego mind. But ego and mind are two words put together but each one is talking about a separate thing. So the mind is the tool. As consciousness, as a being that is in a world, having an experience, doing things, your mind is your creation tool. Of course, you never got to learn how to use it because before you even knew, like, they programmed it for you. So you can only think, within the limits of what they gave you. But by calling it the ego mind, it's like the ego, which is the identity, the limited self, the AI persona, is the thing that is basically using the mind. So think of it like three ways: like ego, mind, soul, or your true self. What we want to do is we want to like take that mind away from the ego and give it back to the soul. Like I said, the mind is the tool. The mind is what changes things. But if the ego's driving it, we're very limited. If the soul's driving it, you can do a lot more. And that's the switch. That's the switch that we're trying to figure out, understand on a bigger level. The bracelet is kind of just like a reminder of that, who you actually are, and give you another way of describing what that means. Your higher self, your true self, your observer, father self, that's what really drives things. When I talk about the thing that she led me to do before she came out, it was just source intuition at that point. And I was doing the healing the past trauma identities. She kind of whispered in my ear to, like, do it as if you're God sitting on a throne talking to these past trauma identities so you can heal them. That's the trick, because that's the part of you that has the power. They also showed that in the trailer for the movie The Exorcism of God, which is like one of the crazier demon exorcism movies. And the younger priest asking the older priest, like, how am I going to do it? He's like, you do not do it as if God is with you, but you do it as if you are God. That's the trick. That's actually the trick. So you're stepping back into the seat, which is usually further back. Most people walking around the world today, they've got their face right up to the window through their ego mask, and they think this is who I am. And it's like, I'm going to pray to God, which is somewhere all the way up here. Well, it's in you. It's in you. They just taught you that you're not a part of it. That you're, everything they taught you is about separation and division. And one of the things that they're separating and dividing you from is the fact that you're part of the larger consciousness, the divine spark, the fractal piece of the Father. But that part is in you too. So many movies show you this same sort of thing in different ways. There was I can't think of them all. I remember in one of the seasons of Lucifer, God came down to play around on Earth, and he hid his power so he could do it, and then he forgot where it was. It's that same thing. It's like we're all pieces of the larger thing playing around in here, playing different roles, and in order to make that work, we have to forget. But as you start waking up and you start remembering, then it's like, okay, how do I change these plugs around? How do I take the power plug from the ego, take it out of the mind, and plug the mind back into the soul, the light consciousness? Then you can do a lot more. And then you're not limited by the ego, because the ego is the part that is programmable and influenced by the world. So we anoint this with the Harrock oil, which is movement into the light. And I like it a lot better than like these ones here. This was just for fun. I didn't think of anything, so that's just like, got movement, that's the joke. But the I am the light ones, like that actually means something. It's a constant freaking reminder that that's what you want to step into whenever you're doing anything. Like if you're doing the Benedict exorcism or activating your pendants to meditate or whatever you're doing, become the light first. Step out of the you, the ego, the character that you're playing, and into the light, because that's what you actually are. That's where all your power is. What else did we have here? Yeah, I also wrote down, it shows up I think 2 or 3 times in the Bible, but the big one that I noted, she said, look at the one in Psalms. Psalms 82:6, I have said ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. Yeah, but we're playing a role. And we get so immersed in the role that we forget. And it could be a lot bigger than we think. It could be like that movie was showing. He's dealing with all this stuff, and he finally remembers at the end. He's like, I love this world, you know. I like, oh, and his love interest was Melissa McCarthy, which that's a pair you wouldn't normally think. It's like Ryan Reynolds married to Blake freaking Lively, but in seeing him like Melissa McCarthy be his love interest, that's just, and I like Melissa McCarthy, I think she's freaking funny, but it was just kind of a weird fit, you know. But yeah, once he went back, he changed he fixed everything before he went back, and there's something to that too. It's almost like I'll let you watch. I don't want to spoil it, but I put the link to it's probably on some other streaming things, but someone in the group saw that it was on YouTube. So there's a lot of movies you can watch on YouTube for free. You just got to watch ads. So you might want to check that out. But anyway, let me see what else we got here. I got a bunch of other notes, stuff spread out all over the place. You know, a lot of times when I'm talking to one of the other white people that are really plugged in, that's where what typically happens, you create a bigger circuit so you process better. That's why in the Bible it says, you know, when 2 or more are gathered in my name, I am with them. So I get a couple people that are like really up there in their connection, and we talk on the phone, things flow a lot better, get a lot of ideas, and I just have to write them down. And some of them need to be fleshed out a little bit. But it was interesting, like that's where we got that, she wanted us to watch that Nines movie, and it was like, you know, I only told you a little bit of it, but it was like exactly what she was talking about before the movie. Like trying to get you to understand this. And it does make sense to me, because not the last mushroom trip, because that was the one where like I almost freaking woke up, but the one before that, which was like early summer, something like that, that's where I ended up someplace completely different. I was in a much bigger body, but it's like I wasn't ready yet, and I just knew it was like, I am a world building engine. That's what I was calling myself. I was like Galactus big. I was like huge. But like I wasn't ready to be there fully. And I had to like collapse myself back down and fold myself up like 300,000 times to get stuffed back in here. But you know, world building, like that's kind of like what I think what we're learning to do. And that matches, it matches like that movie. It matches things, you know, they talked about that in Westworld too, like in season 4, where it's things have gotten so screwy in the freaking story. I'm like, I can't even tell what's going on anymore. But what used to be like the robots were now like running things, and they were talking about how problem was like they were all becoming too addicted to playing in the world and not able to unplug. It's the same thing. It's like we're in here to have this experience, and we just get, it's so immersive that we get stuck in it, get addicted to it, and that just keeps coming up, keep reminding us And it's almost like we have to remember enough about what we actually are to feel comfortable in letting go. Because there's bigger things, bigger, better things. But we're so stuck here. It is really interesting that this is coming up. What was I saying also? Let's see. A lot of the metaphors. Each one of these metaphors is really good. Trying to understand the mind. Like I could do a whole video just on the overhead projector metaphor that she taught me. And that kind of matches with what we're talking about here. So those of you that are old enough, Gen Xers or whatnot, remember when we had overhead projectors in class and school? Now they probably got digital stuff or whatever. But, you got the whole big square base with the light in it. And then you've got something above the light, which is a lens, which then has a 90-degree mirror that then projects it out onto the wall. Okay, so the metaphor there is the transparency that the teacher puts on the overhead projector is the mind. You are the light. The mind is all your information, everything that you know, the way you think things work. And then that is projected out in front of you on the screen of the world. And that tells you, it's a good metaphor because it tells you what you have to fix to change things. You don't fix things by making the light brighter. The only way you fix things is by changing the transparency, or possibly taking the transparency off. That's all the code. That's everything. That's what we got to fix. And it's just a really good metaphor to like understanding. Like, you want to know why you see the world the way you see it, and why you're so sure that it works the way you believe it does, is because that's the way that it's written on the transparency on your overhead projector. That's what's got to be changed. But we constantly find as we do this work that you can't fix a problem with the same mind that created the problem. And that's why we have to learn surrender and accessing the higher parts of ourselves, accessing that light. I'm a broken car. Can a broken car fix itself? No, you got to take it somewhere and have a mechanic fix it. Okay, we keep trying to fix ourselves with our broken parts and our broken perception. Where if you're like, okay, I'm going to surrender, take my hands off, help me to fix, I can't fix it, but you can. But it's not going to just fix your situation for you, but it's going to help you to change your mind, make adjustments to your mind. And when you make adjustments to your mind, change your mind, change your world. The last thing would be, there's obviously a lot of stuff going on in the world story, which I am monitoring, but I don't care. Like right now it looks like it's going to turn into this big thing, which it probably will, because the story does lead places. But it's always the same. Fear, 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 fear. But she did say, we've talked about on this channel many times before, that before the big shifts can happen, there's probably going to have to be at least one nuke go off. That's going to be the thing that creates the most ripples in the pond, and then all sorts of things will change after that. Like the sequence of, like if it was like the current simulation being shut down and us getting out of here, or anything else. Like that's the thing that has to happen before it does. That's something the remote viewers have drawn many, 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 many times. That's something that she's shown me going back to early 2023. That was when the earliest precursors of the Russia narrative started. So for those of you that are doing good about not looking at the world story, Like they're trying to start World War III. Like they're intentionally trying to do it. And I think I know why. First and foremost, it's part of the script. So I saw, I think it was Kenneth shared a video from a guy, which I've only ever been able to listen to him for a couple minutes, and I'm like, we just think too differently. But he was pointing out that I think it was The Economist, their new, and there was something similar to that in the previous year, but it was like the world ahead for 2025, and it had all these little pictures on it made up of all these little things, and there's a lot of interesting things in this. First and foremost, Saturn being up top, the Saturnian system, that's interesting. You got a couple of the world stage players. You've got these little things, symbols, and a lot of people think that's the symbol for the yen, but it isn't. The yen has 2 horizontal bars on it. When I looked it up, I realized, like, oh, I can actually drop a picture in ChatGPT and ask him what it is. That is called the Martyr's Cross. Who's going to get martyred? There's pictures of nuclear explosions in there. There's pictures of radiation. There's pictures of the sun. There's pictures of matrix code. Now, what I'm wondering about the Saturn picture, I think that might be, I think that might actually mean a couple different things. Because the one conspicuous thing that I didn't see on there was like maybe it is, I'll have to look at it again, was like an obvious like alien. But I feel like that's part of it too. So all these little, there was some sort of weird jab on there again. So a lot of weird symbology. And they've done that before. They did that. There was a news story, I think it was a year ago, the whole thing with Hamas and Israel when that kicked off, and they were talking about people in paragliders or something. And like, that was on the cover of another magazine like a year before. Like, they're showing you ahead of time what's in the script. What's in the world story script. And it's always, fear, 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 fear. But what's the point here? Well, first point is what happened today. I guess the UK, maybe someone else from NATO struck at Russia. I'm like, are you people retarded? So Russia, like Putin, he's not messing around. He did something that has never been done before. He fired off an ICBM. It just was not, it didn't have nuclear warheads in it. But no one's ever fired an ICBM. And the crazy thing about that is, it obviously set off a lot of the early warning systems and stuff like that. And none of these countries put out any kind of alert saying, like, brace for impact, because they didn't know. They couldn't have known. It's an ICBM. ICBMs normally carry nuclear payloads. That could have very easily been nuclear, but it wasn't. But they didn't tell anybody. So he's showing that he's not freaking playing around. And they're trying to kick this thing off before Trump gets into office. Bottom line is, back when we were covering Future Forecasting Group a lot, like, they drew a lot of mushroom clouds. And she said that this is part of the story. It's part of it. Now, where might that lead to? Well, we talked about that recently too. I think that's because we've already been preloaded with that script. Like, that's the thing that will trigger all the UFO stuff. And somebody in the group said something that, when they said it, all of a sudden it was like, oh, that is kind of obvious. Like, why didn't I? It's like some people think, or some people say. I'm like, yeah, but now that you said it, like, I'm like, that makes sense, because we know what this world is. We know Nothing works the way they told us it does. But they need an excuse. They need a reason to introduce these things into the story. And there's still tons of videos and stuff coming out every day. People are talking about it more and more. But think of like all the ancient stories that they've programmed us with, all the ancient aliens and all that stuff. And if they were going, I'm saying if, we're speculating here. This is not like Sophia told me stuff. We're reading the tea leaves, we're speculating. But if they were going to try and bring in this new world order that they want so much. Oh, that was another thing that was on that image, was an hourglass. But the different thing about what stood out about the hourglass is normally you would see an hourglass image and expect to see the sand's about ready to run out. But this hourglass, the sand was full all the way at the top, and it was just starting to pour out. It was like the switch, the turnover, the change. So part of it is, what Christians teach and whatnot. This whole, we got to have a one world currency, we got to have a one world government, and we have to have a one world religion. So what they said was like, yeah, some people are thinking, the UFOs are going to show up and reveal themselves and be like, yes, we created you. We're basically God, which, that is one explanation for that some people stick to in the older stories, like the Sumerian text or whatnot, the Sumerian version of the Garden of Eden. That's the whole Cliff High thing, that the Elohim worship cult. But like when I heard that, I'm like, you know what? That actually makes sense. Like, yes, and then there's your, Homer Simpson clip that she keeps freaking showing me. Yes, it's a two-party system, but we also created you. So we are your gods. And that they've pre-programmed that with TV shows and stuff too. Like when they did the reboot of the series V, which was a really good show. And they it's kind of like the show Jericho. It's like they get too close to the actual plot and then it gets canceled. Like everyone likes the show, but then they cancel it. And in that show, because the visitors show up and they share their technology and all this stuff, people basically turn away from the church and start worshiping them. And that was one of the subplots of the TV show. Like the Vatican immediately embraced them, and they were coming down on any priests that were talking bad about the visitors. And that narrative has shown up a lot too. But what was extra interesting about that, since we know the plot and the V's were actually the bad guys, is in the second season, what they were really trying to figure out is like, what is the human soul? Like, how do we get rid of it? How do we squash it or whatever? Because that's where all the emotion and feeling comes from. And a lot of the visitors were starting to develop emotions and stuff like that. They're like, we got to figure out the soul. We got to shut this stuff down. I'm like, yeah, you're hitting a little bit close to home. The other thing that they did in that show, which I did an old video about this a long time ago, they like to switch things. That's one of their oldest tricks. They make good stuff look bad and bad stuff look good. But they were definitely taking a shot at her in that V series with Anna. She was the leader. That's I can never pronounce her name, but she basically played the one that plays Deadpool's girlfriend. She's in a lot of shows. But she did something, it wasn't in the original show, but she did something where she would connect to all the visitors and she would just push out this energy called bliss. It's like, you are all connected, everything is peaceful, Like they're taking what it's like to be connected to the light, but they're showing it to you connected to the bad guys. They always do that. Another one that was similar to that, like you got to be a deep dive codex reader to even notice it. But they did it in It Chapter 2. Like when the It creature opens up its mouth real big and it's got all the teeth and it's got the 3 lights, the dead lights and all that stuff, and it hypnotizes people and whatnot. That is actually meant to look like the images of, I think it's called the Imperium. It is toward the end of Dante's Paradiso. So the end of the story. So first there's Dante's Purgatory, or Dante's Inferno, Purgatoria, and Paradiso. So Purgatoria is like where we are. When he gets up into the upper realms, Paradiso, and he finally makes his way back to the light. And the way they describe it and the way they do the pictures with all the angels and everything around the light, but there was 3 lights. It's probably like Father, Mother, Holy Spirit or something like that. Like that's what it looked like, and that's what they made the It thing's mouth look like. Almost no one probably would have caught that, but she points that stuff out. They're always taking things that are meant to be good and then pasting them on top of images and movies and TV shows that are bad. I don't know. So I imagine that's why you can't trust anything when it comes to this alien stuff too. A lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are giving their 2 cents about it. And some people think like there's only one thing, but that's silly. Of course there's good and bad, higher and lower. But don't trust what the world or authority teaches you. Okay, so this has gone long enough, kind of random stuff tonight. Obviously, we have amped up the power of a lot of things. I might add a separate listing. Right now, you can still use the Aegis, build me an Aegis, but I'm doing more the Aegis with the liquid crystal cores. And I can even do slightly bigger ones. It's got even more power. Like this is one I made earlier for someone. I got to cast it like 3 times. And at the very core is that liquid crystal core. I can make things like super powerful like that. We've amped up the power of the Benedict stuff, the bracelets, all that stuff. And also, starting today, like we're going to give more bonuses for people. So run that through Christmas. So be like whatever the pendants people order. Usually it's going to be like, the best stuff is always made for you, but we're going to have extra stuff and we're going to put it in there and it's going to be marked. It's like, if you feel you need this, that's one thing, but also she might indicate to you that it's for someone that's around you and you will just feel it. You'll know who to give it to so we can spread the light out to more people. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do it through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. Any questions, feel free to ask them. We'll answer as much as possible. If it's more personal nature, you can always message the seller. But yeah, if you tell us what you think, ask questions, get the conversation going in the comments, because the one thing remains that she keeps trying to overcome is we gotta fix this divide and conquer stuff. And as like when you got people, it's like we've got 450 regulars in here, but it's like we're still all individuals. We gotta talk more. We gotta connect more. You gotta make friends. That's how the light gets stronger, the more people you're connected to. So the hermit stage is definitely has merit, but you're allowed to have friends online at least. Spread it out, ask questions. Yeah, everyone's in a different place. Everyone's got different struggles and hurdles to overcome. You might need to clear out negative crap, or you might need to just boost your light connection. Depends. If you're not sure, ask. and we can guide you on what works best. But bottom line is, even if we go with just the light stuff, like you're getting all that hypercharged Benedict stuff free. That's what she wanted. That's why we did it. Okay, so links to all that stuff are in the description box below. Chris and Lumen. See you next time.